Hello everyone, my name is Michelle, and today we're going to be talking about factorial expressions. So let's get started. So really quickly, we're going to do a review of factorials, which we covered in the last video. So if you're not sure how to solve these, please check that one out. Anyways, right now, you should pause the video and solve these, and then we'll go over them together. Alright, question A. We have 4 factorial. So the way we are going to solve this is we are going to expand it. 4 factorial is going to expand to 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And then we just solve that. So 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24, and 24 times 1 is just 24. So 4 factorial is 24. Next, moving on to question B, we have 5 factorial over 4 factorial. And the way we are going to solve this is we are going to expand the 5 factorial into 5 times 4 factorial. And then we have 4 factorial in the denominator. So these will cancel out, and we are left with 5. So next, on to question C, we have 2 factorial over 3 factorial times 4 factorial. So what we're going to do is expand everything. So we have 2 times 1 over 3 times 2 times 1 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So we see that the 2 times 1 in the numerator will cancel out with a 2 times 1 in the denominator. And all we need to do is multiply out the denominator. We're going to have 3 times 2, which is 6. 6 times 1, 6. 6 times 4, which is 24. 24 times 3, which is 72. So our answer is 1 over 72. Alright, moving on, let's talk about factorial expressions, starting with a normal factorial. When we expand out a factorial, such as 7 factorial, it's going to look something like this. So we go 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. But let's think about this. What's really happening here? So we're starting with this number, 7. And we're going 7 minus 1, 7 minus 2, 7 minus 3, 7 minus 4, 7 minus 5, and then 7 minus 6. So do you see how 6 equals 7 minus 1, 5 equals 7 minus 2, 4 equals 7 minus 3, and 3 equals 7 minus 4, so on and so on. So for factorial expressions, we're going to use that information, which is, something we actually already know and have been using, and we're just going to write it out using variables. So for this expression down here, n factorial, we start with a number, n. Our next term is n minus 1. Our second term is n minus 2. Our third term is n minus 3. And this will go on infinitely. So yeah, that's basically all factorial expressions are. You're just going to keep minusing 1 for every term. And hopefully you guys can see the connection between n factorial and the 7 factorial. So for each of these examples, I'm going to expand to the 4th term. So for example 1, we have n plus 1 factorial. Our first term is always going to be n plus 1. And then we're going to multiply. So then we're going to do minus 1. So n plus 1 minus 1, that's just n. Next term is minus 1 again, which is n minus 1. And then our next term after that is minus 1. So then we're going to go n minus 2. And that is it. So on to question 2, we have n minus 2 factorial. Our first term is going to be n minus 2 times n minus 2 minus 1, which is n minus 3. Then we'll go n minus 4, and then n minus 5. So let's move on to kind of the more important part of factorial expressions, simplifying factorial expressions. So again, let's relate this to simplifying normal factorials. So here we have 7 factorial over 6 factorial. And to simplify this, what we would do is expand out that 7 factorial to 7 times 6 factorial over 6 factorial. And then we cancel out those 6 factorials and we'll be left with 7. So we're basically doing the same thing with factorial expressions. On the right side, we have n factorial over n minus 1 factorial. And what we want to do is cancel out the n minus 1 factorial in the denominator, right? So we're going to expand the n factorial to n times n minus 1 factorial over n minus 1 factorial. The n minus 1 factorial in the numerator and denominator are going to cancel out, and we will be left with n. So again, hopefully you can see the connection, because basically you're doing the same thing, just showing the information using variables. Alright, so let's do some examples. Example A, we have n plus 1 factorial over n factorial. So what we're going to do is we want to cancel out that n factorial in the denominator. So we are going to expand the n plus 1 in the numerator to n plus 1. And then what would the next term be? So we're going to subtract 1 from n plus 1, so that's just going to be n factorial over n factorial. The n factorials are going to cancel out, and we will be left with n plus 1. That's it. Alright, next we have example B. It is a little bit more work, but not really. So we have n minus 3 factorial over n plus 1 factorial. So let's think about, can we expand the numerator or the denominator to allow us to cancel out a term? Well, in this case, we can expand the denominator to cancel out the numerator. Alright, so let's do that. We will keep the numerator, n minus 3 factorial, and we will expand out the denominator. So first term will be n plus 1 times n minus 1 times n minus 2 times n minus 3 factorial. So we're going to cancel out that n minus 3 factorial in the numerator and denominator. Bam, bam. And we will be left with 1 over n plus 1 times n minus 1 and that is our final answer. So you could expand out that denominator if you really wanted to, but it's not necessary. Anyway, that's all I have for this lesson. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you learned something today. Have a great day.